My name is Erica Fischer. I'm an assistant professor at Oregon State University in the School of Civil and Construction Engineering. I've had a little bit of an atypical path to where I am right now. I finished undergraduate in 2007, and it was a really great economy. So I was able to get a job as a structural engineer right out of undergrad. I also had switched into civil engineering a little bit later in my academic career as an undergrad. So I wanted to make sure this was the job that I wanted to do before going to graduate school. So I worked in New York City as a structural engineer for 3 years. And then began to realize I needed to go to graduate school. I was seeing a lot of the colleagues I looked up to have master's degrees, and I wanted to work on the West Coast doing earthquake engineering. During that time working in New York, the 2010 Haiti earthquake occurred as well. So I had the opportunity to go down to Haiti and help with the building inspections down there, where I met a ton of engineers from the West Coast, all of which had a master's degree, and kind of told me, go get a master's degree, come work with us on the West Coast. So I applied to graduate programs, and I got into Purdue and received a fellowship. So I didn't want to pay for grad school, so I decided to go to Purdue. And I was pretty adamant about only getting my master's degree. And my advisor will laugh about it. But around the time I was about to graduate, I realized I'd taken a lot of design courses during my master's, and I really enjoyed doing research. I wanted to have the opportunity to really just see it all through. So I came to him and asked if he would be, willing to take me on as a PhD student, and he was. So I was very fortunate about that, and stayed for my PhD. And during that time, I was also very adamant that I was only going back into industry. I had loved working as a structural engineer in New York, and I wanted to do the same on the West Coast. So after graduation, I moved to Seattle, where I was working for Degenkolb. I really wanted to be working on existing buildings, and I knew from all the conferences I had gone to, including NASCC throughout my graduate career, that Degenkolb did a lot of existing building work. And so I went to work there, and during that time, I again, just missed doing research. I missed that wondering about things, and then just really taking your time to figure that out. And I was learning so much working at Degenkolb about, gaps in knowledge in seismic codes, and it was really interesting being the only non-California office at the time. So the lack of seismic ordinances was really obvious. So all of that really influenced what I do today as an academic, but I wanted to be doing research. So I started applying to academic jobs, and now I am at Oregon State University. I think steel is a really fascinating material to work with, because it's used in all different buildings. So right now I'm teaching graduate steel design, and we're doing composite beam design, and it is almost exactly the same as a reinforced concrete beam design. So I just think that it's just really cool that, particularly with steel, you get to see the different ways that it plays a role in buildings, in all different types of buildings. I do timber research, and composites with timber research, and using steel as the shear connectors between the timber and the concrete, using steel in the connections between glulam beams and glulam columns. So I'm using steel in every aspect of my research, even if it isn't a fully steel building. And I just think that is a really cool and ubiquitous application of a material, that it is so ductile and contributes this great ductility to all different types of buildings. I'm not just saying this because this is like a teaching award, but I think the completion of teaching my first class, I think it's you really go through the emotional up and downs with the students throughout the term, and designing that first class in the way that I wanted to deliver the material and be able to bring in real life examples from all of my work in industry, both for historical buildings and retrofits and new construction, and then getting to know all of the students. It's an undergraduate class, and so it was the first term I taught at Oregon State University, and so it was just a really wonderful introduction to all of the undergraduate students here, to get to know the culture of the university and the types of students. That was just a really special class for me, and completing the instructions and teaching of that class felt like a really great accomplishment. Oh my goodness, so many roles. I feel like AISC and in particular has played different roles for me throughout every stage of my career. And because I went to Purdue, we were really close to Chicago, and that was a wonderful opportunity for me to be engaged with AISC locally on a more regular basis, rather than just once a year or through a publication. And my advisor encouraged us to attend the NASCC conference as students, and especially when you get all of the discounts and freebies along the way. So I started attending the Steel Conference my first year of grad school, and there was a career fair portion. There was the Direct Connect, I think it's called, and that I went to, and I met so many people in industry that I then were able to bring them to Oregon State University for lectures, for our student organizations that I've used as mentors along the way. Because we were physically close to Chicago, my PhD advisor would go to the TC meetings and ask us to come to TC 8, which is which writes Appendix 4, just fire, and just sit in the room and listen. And I think I've gone to every TC 8 meeting almost since I started graduate school. And just sitting there and listening to the conversations, and then connecting with people and talking to people during, lunches or breakfast or coffee breaks, and getting to know the amazing AISC staff, just, ingratiated us into the culture of AISC. Because we were one of very few students there, the AISC staff would always introduce us to different people in industry or academics that maybe we should know or we should connect with, which was always just so wonderful. And throughout my career, I've published in Engineering Journal. I've reviewed for Engineering Journal. I'm now an official member of TC8 and the Committee on Manuals. So now I'm writing Appendix 4. And now I'm receiving this award. So I feel like I've kind of grown up as an engineer and an academic in the AISC organization. I have a project funded by AISC and PEER, the Pacific Earthquake Engineering Research Center based out of UC Berkeley. And a lot of my research with steel structures is in the behavior of steel structures and fire. And so what we're doing with this grant is we are benchmarking and adapting OpenSeas, which is an open source finite element program, to be able to simulate the behavior of steel structures and fire. This would allow for the barrier to entry to be lowered a bit for structural fire engineering. We have in the US and internationally, when graduate students are working in the field of earthquake engineering for their research, they're normally using OpenSeas. And so we have a massive contingent of engineers working in industry who know how to use this program. So there's kind of a steep learning curve with it. So if they already know how to use it, and we can just teach them, the fire side, then they don't have to. Those firms don't have to purchase expensive finite element software, and there's a bunch of people already at these companies that know how to use software. We're working actually with NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, to benchmark models against some really awesome, really cool large-scale testing that they're doing there. So this is a really fun project for me to get to work with some of the people I actually went to graduate school with and who are now at NIST, but also to work with many people in AISC and connect PEER into that fire realm. So it's a fun project, and we're about 2 years in, and we have another 2 years, so I'm really excited about it.